Now we go to the sidechain section here. And you can have an internal or external sidechain, either one triggering. You can monitor the internal or external sidechain. And you can EQ the internal or external sidechain. So to do that, you click on the dot and you enable it here. And then we have these filters, and you can change the slope of the filter to very, very sharp or very gentle. In analog world, usually the slope of the filter is 12 dB per octave. That's the way most equipment is built. That's what you're going to see over the last 50 years for the most part. 6 dB being gentle, but in digital we can get much sharper, and analog too, so you can play with that. Be warned a little bit, if you go crazy steep on some of this stuff, it's not always as musical as a little bit more of a gentle slope, but you do what you have to do. And here we can turn this on, and I guess it's in auto mode now, and we can do some boosts. And boosting in the internal sidechain makes the compressor more sensitive to whatever frequency is boosted, which means that it needs less energy to trigger gain reduction, and that you're encouraging more gain reduction at those frequencies, even more than the input signal has. What is this good for? Is sometimes really bright sibilant stuff. If 6K, if something's kind of bright and a little painful, you can push up the 6K and the gain reduction will kick in more quickly than it normally would, make it when it's more sensitive to certain frequencies. So this is a cool way to sort of customize your compressor. And then similarly, it's critical with internal and external sidechain filtering that we do this for stuff like when we make the bass duct to the kick. We want a shorter trigger for the gain reduction, and if we have a fat subby kick, it's not going to make a tight enough sidechain, so we can filter that. Or if we put this like on a drum bus or on a mix bus, we don't want the low frequencies causing the gain reduction, so we filter them out. Same with the ultra highs too. Sometimes we want to leave those not triggering the gain reduction as well. So I do believe that that's the grand tour right there. So let's do a little bit of compression here. I'm going to, one more thing. Okay, one more thing. Let's look at the personalities here. And so again, one of the super cool things that they did here is that they gave us these different personalities, different behavior of the different compressors. So clean is feed forward. And feed forward means that the actual input signal directly causes the gain reduction. These are topologies or designs of compressors. So this is the fastest and the most reactive and the cleanest. Now, in the analog world, a lot of compressors are feedback style, feed forward as opposed to feedback. Feedback actually listens to the increase in the signal after the gain reduction circuitry. That sounds totally weird, like that could never work, but it actually does, and it makes this sort of codependent musical tracking of the signal that's really, really dope. So feed forward, the input signal exceeds the threshold, it triggers the gain reduction directly. Classic mode is feedback compressor. It's listening off of the back end of the compressor for voltage changes. And consequently, it is not as quick, and it allows some of the initial transients to be uncompressed, which makes for a little bit of a more percussive and sometimes more natural sounding percussive event. Clean jumps right into the game and can really take your transients right away from you. Classic, because of that feedback style of compression, tends to allow for a little bit more initial transient energy. And it's like what most of these compressors are. Opto. Now, opto, you see opto all the time, right? You see lots and lots of opto. Why do people love opto? Okay, here's why people love opto. This is why you see it in all kinds of wave compressors, all kinds of different compressors. Opto does this. If you're doing a light amount of gain reduction, opto releases quickly. And if you're doing like between 1 to 3 dB of gain reduction, if you're doing more than 3 dB of gain reduction, 5, 6, 7 dB of gain reduction, that's a lot, right? If you want to make something twice as loud, you turn it up 6 dB. That's like an audio bit of knowledge, right? Someone says, make it twice as loud. You turn it up 6 dB, it's twice as loud. So if you're doing 6 dB of gain reduction, things are moving up and down by 6 dB. That's a lot. So what opto circuitry does is if you're doing a lot of gain reduction, it releases really slowly. It doesn't want to drop you. It doesn't want to let go and snap back to the uncompressed signal quickly, because that would create pumping and breathing. Pumping and breathing can be a good thing. It can be very musical and it can provide a lot of energy. But if you're looking for transparent compression, opto has this really built-in cool release behavior that's smooth. So I'll say that again. If you're doing a little bit of gain reduction, it releases quickly, so you don't notice it. And if you're doing a lot of gain reduction, it releases slowly, so you don't notice it. And it is probably my favorite personality for bass compression. Opto compression on the bass is a beautiful thing. Also can be nice on vocals. So that's the third personality. Here is vocals, and if you notice, the ratio just grayed out on me for vocals. I can't touch it. It's got this sort of auto ratio thing, and it almost goes into what we were talking about earlier today. It almost becomes at this point a musical compressor, right? When they take away controls from us and they kind of auto the ratio, that's a little bit what a LA2A does, or LA3A does, or a Fairchild does. You know, as you drive it harder, the ratio changes automatically in a musical way. So this vocal personality is very cool for vocals. It's not mellow, you'll find. It's almost reminds me a little bit of Arvox from Waves. It's got a kind of, you have a variable attack, but it's a bit grabby and it's a little limitery. Is that a word? Limitery? It is now. So it can work very well, but don't feel that because it's a vocal, you have to use vocal. Don't do that. I use it sometimes, but I use clean, classic opto a lot on vocals, and it sounds great. I don't always use vocal on vocals, but try it out. It's sort of a vocal limiter vibe in a way. Mastering is for mastering, and it's gentle, but it has a grabby quality to it that may not necessarily work for EDM, right? In EDM, we're so protective. And I'll take questions in a second. But go ahead and blurt them out so you don't forget them, and we'll go back through them. In EDM, when we're compressing the master, we're so protective of our low frequency transients, because if the low frequency transients get choked, people stop dancing, and we need things to go boom, 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 boom. So we're very, very careful about using things that are grabby and mastering. So although this is an interesting personality for mastering, I typically don't use it for mastering. That's the honest truth. If I was doing some rock or some instrumental, jazz or something, classical maybe could work. I don't know. It's a little grabby, so play with it. But if you find that it's too grabby for your bouncy house music, you're not crazy. I mean, you might be crazy, but that's not why you're crazy. For like me, crazy. The bus one is very, very useful. This is the closest thing to the SSL-G compressor in terms of personality. It's not grabby. And in fact, you're going to probably use this more in mastering than you would the mastering personality. That's just my opinion. It's more like a glue. It's not grabby, and it doesn't release really quickly. It's roly-poly, and it's a fattening effect, a fat maker, which is really, really cool. Punch is got a personality where it's got an attack release personality that is a little grabby and releases quick, and it can make things kind of hit very hard. Good for kicks and good for snares and claps and things that need to have a little knock to them. It's a very nice one to try. And then pumping has got, here's a fancy word, hysteresis. Hysteresis is the speed of the decay of a signal. And when you increase the hysteresis, or that drop down back to the uncompressed signal, when it's really fast, it can do a pumping effect. And again, pumping effects can really put energy into things in a way that is very, very cool. It's a little bit the opposite of this opto, right? This doesn't want to pump. This wants to pump. So really start to master all of these, use them and flip through them. Where you end up, it does not matter. It's absolutely personal to you. But be aware of them and play with them, because it's almost like for the price of one compressor, you have a rack of some technical compressors and then a couple kind of musical compressors in here. Very, very cool. Okay.